the breath of sparrows. The day Mandela died, I dreamt I was in the house of my mentor, as a frequent guest who took a desk by the window. A towering tree with red and yellow flowers as big as hands, the breeze slipping between each petal finger. I went to his room to ask the name of that tree. He lay on his bed, resting, with eyes closed, but aware of the birds weighing down the branches, leaves caressing the roof, the breath of sparrows like his own. There was no need to name the tree, no need to name anything at all at that moment. I bid him thanks before leaving, my footsteps drowning in sparrow wings.
Hey travelers! Hi, I'm Sydney.
I'm Ella.
I'm Joshua. I'm Chris. I'm Mico.
I'm Julia.
And we are at Santiago! Hey travelers, so Joshua is filming right now. So Daniela, what could you say about Fort Santiago?
So eventually, Fort Santiago is the main fortress of Honduras. It is established by Miguel Lopez de Legazpi on the site of the former wooden fort of Raas Caliman, 1571. And it is also declared a national shrine in the National Monument 1951 and as a national cultural treasure in 2014.
So guys, you know now your brief history of Fort Santiago.
Yay!
Yay!
No pets allowed, no cigarettes, and no throwing trash
Hey
cans.
Joshua!
So let's go!
Let's
Let's go, let's go, let's go!
So guys, as of the moment, we're here at inside Casa de Armas, where this is what you'll see. And Joshua.
You know, this place is actually decorated with a lot of trees. It kind of reminds me of our 21st century literature.
Yes.
Sparrows, right?
It's the bread of sparrows.
What is that? I don't know that, bro. I was sleeping in class.
Bro, why were you sleeping in class?
I don't know,
Mom!
because sir is just
I
a
don't
good
even know
singer,
what
you
they're
know.
talking
Oh,
about.
what? So I'm a good singer? Sure.
No, it's
So the death of Sparrows, right? It's
Yeah,
about Mandela.
Yeah,
Death
it's
of
about-
Mandela.
Yeah.
Nelson Mandela.
Yeah, I actually know him.
You know, this place really reminds me of Leaders, which Nelson was, right?
Yeah.
And the poem was about his death and the sorrow of people, right?
no.
Hey Joshua!
Make sure he's
It's
listening.
always a good day.
This place is basically a remembrance for the people who died here.
Oh,
And
okay.
as for our poem, it is also a remembrance of the sorrow of the
Filipinos.
Filipinos,
yes.
The poem itself is a representation of the feeling of sorrow by the people for Nelson Mandela. So I guess this
somehow connects with.
it somehow
The
connects
poem.
with our poem.
Yeah, the death of Sparrows. Hey Iris, do you want to say something?
When I'm here in Fort Santiago, it's like going back in the past. You know, the past history of Philippines.
Yeah. So Joshua, what do you think about our poem based on our descriptions?
Spectacular.
Spectacular.
It's supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
Oh!
It's wonderful.
Spell.
Superman. Yeah.
So guys, we are in a dungeon. We're supposed to be quiet because earlier, right, we visited the White Cross. So this dungeon is related to this place. So this place was actually newly opened a month ago. So come on, let's go.
So guys, we're already going inside the dungeon. And this is the entrance. Hi guys. is about the author's sorrow in hearing the news about Mandela's death. The usage of figures of speech such as symbolism and metaphor is apparent throughout the poem. Examples are the breath of sparrows and my footsteps drowning in sparrow wings, which is likened to death. The author's dream sequences incorporated these figures of speech to add to the dreamlike quality of the poem. The author relates to the audience in which he addresses Mandela's death in a creative manner to share in the sorrow felt by the tragic news, which made an impact to many.
The Breath of Sparrows author, Jean Pascual Agustin, was born in the Philippines and loved through the dark times of martial law as a poet and eventually left for Cape Town in South Africa in 1994. Agustin published 4 books, Beneath an Angry Star in 1992, Salimbayan in 1994, and lastly, in 2011, which are Bahag-Bahag Dang Kalupukat and Alien to Any Scheme. His poems are attempts to configure a social realist commentary of everyday. He also combines politics and poetry as a way for him to make sense with the everyday experiences in the Philippines and South Africa as a non-governmental organization or NGO worker.
In Philippine context, many had sacrificed their own life in order to protect the country from colonizers. We Filipinos mourn for them and at the same time honor them for fighting for our freedom. This was also felt by the people of Africa when they lost their beloved leader, Nelson Mandela, who had done great things for them. That is why structuralism was chosen by our group as a guide in criticizing this literary piece, because it's not just in the Philippines that we experience this kind of situations, but also at every country like South Africa. Nelson Mandela served as the gateway of freedom of the people in their place, and when he died, it is like freedom was taken away from them because they didn't trust the new leader. This was also the case in martial law era, where the freedom of Filipinos were oppressed by the government.
The sparrow in the poem can be incorporated to Nelson Mandela because he himself has the same traits that a sparrow has. Sparrows can be seen everywhere around the world, which represents the impact of his doings. Except in Antarctica, where Antarctica represents the people that were not greatly impacted by his doings because of their opposition and wrongdoings, especially abuse. Sparrows in the autumn and winter form mixed flocks of different sparrow species. That can be related to Nelson in a way that he sent a message to everyone, to set one's pride aside, and from then on, people of differences united to fight something or someone, and in their unity, they didn't care about their differences, but they had a collective consciousness, which is to be a voice, especially in the martial law era if we are relating it to the Philippine context. Lastly, a sparrow is being seen as small, and this we can definitely relate it to Nelson Mandela. And not just him, but also to the continent of Africa, to his country, South Africa, because Nelson was being treated small by other people. But when he was in jail for decades, he studied law, defended his right to go outside bars, run as the president of South Africa, and be the bomb that will shock the world. Nelson Mandela gave South Africa a reason to rise, and that simple little brown sparrow left a mark in the colors of mankind. The poem was criticized using structuralism as a means to manifest the great impact of Nelson Mandela's death to a lot of people. Each individual, especially the author, took part in the sharing in the sorrow felt by the tragic news of Mandela's death. It mirrored the reality of Mandela's death and the reaction of many, using various figures of speech such as symbolism, simile, and metaphor. Not only the author created a heartfelt poem for Mandela's death, but also united the audience as one with the emotion presented in the poem. Considering that the author has experienced the regime of Marcos, or the regime of the martial law, and has stayed in South Africa, he was greatly influenced by the political nature of both countries. He was in thus giving way to the idea of this poem. The death of a leader striving for freedom against discrimination and oppression gives way for literary works to bring inspiration to authors' minds and hearts.
So guys, that's it for today.
Hope you like our video.
And I hope that you keep up with our future videos. Stream Mukha ng Diyos. Yan!
Like, comment, subscribe, and turn on your post notifications for a shoutout. Shoutout to Sir Ranji Valido.
See you on our next vlog.
Bye!